Hey kids, 5-speed. Actually, real hot rods have 1, 2, 3 pedals and a row your own. You can choose 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I've got 5 in this one now. So we're going to talk about gas mileage. Here's the deal. See that vacuum gauge right there? Here's what you want. You want the lowest RPM range you can get and the highest vacuum reading you can get for the best miles per gallon. Here's what's ironic. I threw this 5-speed in and I just drove it like I was normally driving this thing and threw it in 5th gear all the time. And the speed limit around here is like, what, 35, 45, 55 at the most, which puts me at like 55 is like 1700. 2000 is like 62, 63 miles an hour or something like that with these 410s. That's in 5th. But the ironic part is in 5th gear at 2000 RPMs, vacuum on this thing is like 6 inches of vacuum. And if I'm climbing a hill, it's like 2 or 3 inches of vacuum. My gas mileage suffered. It went down like 2 miles per gallon. So going from 12 to 10 or 12 or 10 to 12 to 9 to 7 somewhere was not good. So what I figured out is if I'm going slower than 45 miles an hour, this thing goes back in 4th gear like normal. And if I start going downhill, I got to shift it, which brings me to the awesome part about automatics, overdrive automatics. Here's the deal in fuel computer controlled vehicles. This is just strictly for educational purposes. I don't like them, but there's something to be said for the technology that monitors engine RPM, load on the engine, throttle, all that fun stuff, and uses a map sensor to measure vacuum or whatever. And to keep it all copacetic, your automatic, if you're cruising down the road and you step in too much and it feels too much of a load, it'll drop a gear or kick out the lockup converter or something to keep your RPMs up to keep the vacuum as high as it can to help for mile per gallon for efficiency. Because as you know, if this thing gets like 0 on this gauge, anything past 0 means that this thing is opening up and adding boost. Actually, part throttle on this, if it takes it down to 0, means this supercharger is starting to overcome the vacuum of the engine and starting to actually not pressurize, it's just reaching a neutral position. And that's not good for mileage, because as vacuum drops, well, here's why. Barometric pressure is 29 inches of vacuum, roughly, at 1 atmosphere where we live. If you look at barometer or whatever, that's what you got. This thing at 0, and outside pressure outside of the carburetor outside is 29, it is forcing fuel through to get to 0. High pressure has to go low pressure. That's just the way it is. So unless I can increase pressure. If I increase pressure with this, then I've got the opposite inside the engine. I actually have increased pressure. I've taken my atmosphere pressure and I've doubled it. I have 1 atmosphere, 2 atmospheres, 3 atmospheres, blah, 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 blah. Or, roughly that's kind of the way it works. But that's what we've got going on. That's not technically how it works. Don't quote me on that. But you get the idea. Overcoming a vacuum and becoming pressure means fuel. So if this vacuum gauge drops down to 0, especially on normally aspirated before it gets into boost, that means that the high pressure in the bowls of the carburetor where the fuel is going to get stuff fuel into the engine. It just has to. It's just the way it is. As vacuum drops, it just requires more fuel. And that, kids, makes the fuel gauge go full to E, F to E. Opposite direction. I want it to stay closer to the F and not closer to the E. I know the sender isn't hooked up. Come on. Anyway, so I play 4th gear, 5th gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, 4th gear, 5th gear. I just try and keep the vacuum up and the RPMs down. That is your lesson for what it is. All in all, this thing is fantastic. I love it. Thanks, Earl. Earl did a great job on this transmission. I love it. I am thinking about gear ratio changes in the rear. I have a 3.0 gear set. You remember that? And this thing got the best mileage it ever got in 4th gear with the 4-speed with the 3.0 gear. But 1st gear in that close ratio 4-speed was really hard to leave in because it's a 220 first. This is a 297 first. So with a 3.0 gear or 323 first, it would feel like this thing with 373s or something like that with a close ratio 4-speed. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of thinking gear ratio thing. Now, when I take this on a road trip, 5th gear, 80 miles an hour is going to be like 2,500, which small block Chevys make the best mileage efficiency at about 2,250, 2,200. Some guys say between 2,000 and 2,700 is the sweet spot. And with the bigger cam and all that kind of stuff, you know, your power band range is up there. So you're also playing with that. Where's your maximum torque? Where's your torque range start? Where's your horsepower range? All that. So whatever your particular combination is, you need to know your engine's power ranges, your gear splits, your gear ratio, and your rear end. And that's the RPM range you're sitting at. So if you can make power, also timing plays in this, and fuel also, don't forget. So if you can make power with less right pedal, more vacuum, less RPM, miles per gallon goes up. Oh yeah, which makes driving a hot rod completely feasible over driving something like that, or that silver BMW Euro thing over there. That's what I'm talking about. Oh look, there's the trolley. That's never going to get more than like 4 miles a gallon. That might actually get like 2, because it's only going to go like 15 miles an hour. It's fun building that 3/4 ply. You'll see that video later. You already did. Anyway, here it is. That's what you got. There'll be more updates. This stuff is not in any sort of chronological order. My brain doesn't work that way. I mean, it kind of does, but it's not working that way. Anyway, I just want to give you guys an update. And then there's going to be a full-on drive video. I will mount cameras in here somewhere. I'll figure it out. We'll have cameras mounted in here. And then we're going to go for a spin, and you'll get to see and hear and actually lack of hearing, because it's really quiet in here. That red guard, and then the peeling stick, and this bubble stuff, and all that stuff, and this little thin carpet from Home Depot is, man, it is nice and quiet in here. It's probably 75% quieter. That's even with the windows open than it was, and it's at least that much cooler in here on my little footsies. Gosh, those are some cute feet. Oh, I cut my foot. No, don't worry about it. I'll see you guys later. Aloha. There's a blower. Look at that tack. Look at that.